Hi everyone, welcome to the very first UNM Debatethon brought to you by Engineers Without Borders and the Nottingham Debate Society. On behalf of both societies, we are pleased to have you joining us for today's event. Before we begin, I just want to remind everyone to fill in your SA disclaimer form if you haven't already. You can find the link in the meeting chat. And if you are all done with that, let's begin the event. My name is Carmen and I'll be your host for today. I'm here to moderate this debate and make sure that everyone has lots of fun. I'll be walking you through the event and explaining what you need to do. We'll start off with the debate, and then you will read the debaters, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the debate in case you have any questions or ideas to share. And finally, we'll reveal the winner of the debate today. And let's start with revealing the motion. The motions today is the House believes that humans are naturally violent. And as mentioned in the emails, you, our amazing audience, are the judges for today's debate. The debaters today will be judged based on these three categories, the 3M: matter, manner, and method. Matter meaning the substance of the debate, the arguments and evidence presented, and the logical reasoning and the presentation of said arguments. Manner, which refers to the style of delivery, the persuasion skills, and the conduct of the debaters. Method, also known as the response to the dynamics of the debate and the observance of the rules of the debate. And finally, you guys will also be voting on today's best speaker. The link to the judging form can be found in the meeting chat. And do note that the judging form has 2 pages. The first page is for the proposition team, and the second page is for the opposition team. So please do pay careful attention to the debate today and vote wisely. We trust your opinion, and also good luck to all the participants. And there will be 2 teams for the debate with 3 speakers on each team. Team A will be the proposition team, meaning that they agree to the motion that I just mentioned just now. And Team B will be the opposition team, and they will be disagreeing with today's motion. Let us get to know the debaters from Team A and Team B. So for Team A, we have Zara, Tanya Shree, and Aziz. And Zara, please introduce yourself, your course, and answer the following ice-breaking question to get yourself started. The question is, if you could have the power of teleportation right now, where would you go and why? Zara, are you here?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Zara. I'm a final year psychology student. So yeah, the answer to the ice-breaking question. Could you please repeat the question?
Okay. If you could have the power of teleportation now, which means you can teleport to anywhere, where would you want to go and why?
I really miss living in the UK. So if I had the power of teleportation, I would go back to UK. Despite the COVID cases. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll have Tanya Shree. Hi, Tanya Shree.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, so my name is Tanya Shree. I'm a first year psychology student. And if I could teleport anywhere, I'd probably teleport home because there's no place like home.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Tanya Shree. And now we'll have the third speaker for the proposition team, Aziz. Hi, Aziz.
Hello, hi. My name is Abdulaziz. I'm a second year psychology with cognitive neuroscience student. And if I could teleport anywhere, it would be Malaysia, because I really miss all my friends there. So yeah, I'd really love to go back.
Okay. Thank you, Aziz. And now we'll have the team B, the opposition team. We have Xinhui, Sharfa, and Qian Qian. Xinhui, are you here?
Yes, hello.
Hi, Xinghui. Please introduce yourself and also answer the icebreaking question.
I'm Xinghui and I'm year 1 chemical engineering student. I would love to teleport to a boat in the middle of the sea, and relax there.
Oh, interesting. Thank you, Xinghui. And now we have Sharfa. Hi, Sharfa.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Hi, my name is Sharfa. I'm a second year computer science student, and if I could teleport anywhere in the world, I'd like to go to Bali so that I could sip a cocktail on the beach and not worry about anything anymore.
Nice choice, Sharfa. And thank you, Sharfa. And now we have Qian Qian.
Hi everyone, I'm Qian Qian. I'm a first year from the School of Education, and if I could teleport somewhere, I think I would teleport somewhere that doesn't have COVID-19, maybe outer space, like Mars. Yeah.
Please invite me when you go there.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Qian Qian. And now we'll have the rules for the debate today. Each speaker will deliver a 7-minute constructive speech, and POIs cannot be given within the first and after the 6th minute, and POIs must be less than 15 seconds. There will be a bell on the first minute indicating that POIs are now open, and another bell on the 6th minute indicating that POIs are now closed. At the 7th minute, the bell will be rung twice, and the debaters will have to wrap up their speeches. There will be a 15 seconds grace period for each speech. After that, I will immediately call upon the next debater to begin his or her address. The timekeeper, Vatika, will be monitoring the event along with me today. Is there any question regarding the rules? If there's no question, without further ado, let's start with the debate. On the motion, the House believes that humans are naturally violent. And now I will stop presenting. Okay. And we'll have Vartika to present the timer.
Yep, just give me 1 second.
Okay. Zara, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll wait until. Okay, Zara, you can start now.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Today we are here to state our belief that humans are naturally violent. Before we begin, I would like to set the motion of today's debate by defining the terms violence and natural. Violence refers to behavior which involves the intention to harm, damage, or kill someone or something. It's not limited to physical aggression. There are many forms of violence, such as emotional, psychological, sexual, spiritual, neglect, verbal, and even financial violence. On the other hand, natural can be anything that is without intervention, or in other words, even innate. I would like to move on to my first point now, in which I highlight the fact that not everyone who is in a bad environment is necessarily violent. Those individuals who are in a good environment can also be violent. So I would like to also highlight the fact that we humans are surrounded by violence on a daily basis, such as bullying in school settings and arguments between individuals, groups, or even cultures. This now allow me to elaborate on this example with my next point, which is that humans tend to find violent acts pleasurable and fun. So allow me to give you a few examples from the extreme side of the violent field, such as psychopaths or serial killers who have several times admitted that they commit violent acts for no other reasons than simply pleasure and fun. this shows that there is definitely something natural associated with the act of violence. On the other hand, referring back to the example of bullying, I'm sure most of us have heard many times that a bully is often been bullied by someone else themselves, which causes them to bully other people. Let me cite a quote from New Perspectives on Bullying, which highlights the possible risk factors of bullying and causes of bullying. The quote says, "Bullying itself is a lot of fun for children," which means that children find bullying fun and they do it as a pleasurable activity rather than any other motive. This means that violence is within the human species. It doesn't necessarily come from shaping by environment or life events or circumstances. I would like to further I would like to also clear the fact that we may argue that extreme forms of violence by psychopaths or serial killers may be due to the environment they grew up in. But then how could we justify the research findings that humans have biologically evolved to become more adaptive to violence? Talking about evolution, I would like to define the term as taking forward the best of the survival traits as human species, and leaving behind the rest to die, or the way Charles Darwin put it, survival of the fittest. This is the idea that only the best traits survive, the ones that are required, and the ones that help us reproduce offspring and take our human race further. In the same way, females are more attracted to violent males. The reason behind this is that they seek partners who can protect them and provide for them and provide security for them. So from this, I would like to state that humans, the violence is naturally within human species. Another example to support my point comes from research by David Carrier, who reported that the human fist, the butt-rest fist, is designed. It has evolved as an effective weapon in humans because if you use the butt-rest fist to hit someone, it can hit with force. Unlike other species, like other animals who may not even have the ability to make a fist with their hands. So I would like to end with a question to the audience, that a thought-provoking question, which is that if humans were deemed to be naturally pleasant, then why would our bodily features, postures, evolve in such a way to allow us to allow us to become violent whenever it's required? So with this, I would like to end my points and state that this is why the side proposition strongly believes that humans are naturally violent.
Okay, I thank the member for her remarks, and we shall now hear the first speaker from the opposition. Xin Hui, please begin.
Yes, first and foremost, I would like to ask the government, which is the first speaker just now, how many percentage does sociopath, those people with mental problems that they seek pleasure in bullying people, are they the majority of the society, or are they the minority of society? And besides, bullying doesn't mean that we actually have these genes in our bodies that we like to bully other people's. And children, they bully, it's caused by a lot of factors. Why do they bully? Do they bully because of their nature or because of any other reasons? There are a lot of reasons behind the act that they bully. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are in nature to do the bullying or they are violent in nature, okay? In fact, if humans are naturally violent, we wouldn't have come this far. Technologies, economies will just be a mess, okay? There are certainly more cooperations and collaborations among humans than conflicts in our daily life. Each species in this planet is a part of the ecosystem, and every species is very important and crucial to the ecosystem. We certainly can't deny that we rely on each other to survive in nature. And just now you said that the survival of humans require violence, but I think violence doesn't really help our survival actually. By destroying other people, we don't really survive in nature. Instead, by collaborating and cooperating with other species or other humans, we may be smoother in our lives and we could survive better. Yes?
You just said that in order to survive, we rather choose a route to be more cooperative instead of violent. But what would you say if, let's say, a person of another tribe tries to attack mine? How am I going to survive that situation without violence?
First and foremost, why do they attack us? Are they in nature to attack us, or are there any other triggers that them to attack us? Okay. Okay, so actually most people actually live a life without being violent. And most human cultures are not violent at all. There is a findings stated that 70 societies in this world, they do not make war at all. For instance, the Maritime of Australia, they do not even have words for warfare or fighting. And the Semai of Malaysia, they just simply flee into forests when faced with conflict. And humans do not really naturally attack vulnerable groups like elderly people, pregnant women, disabled persons of the society. Most of us, we usually offer a penny to beggars on the street, and we do help strangers by picking up the things they accidentally, and kindness is certainly around us. And when there are massive disasters happen to an area or a country, most people, we don't just say that, wow, that is the best news of the century, and we clap our hands and open a party. That is not our natural response. And maybe we won't feel pity for them, or we just get used to it, and we just feel like, oh, it's another disaster, there's nothing. But most of us certainly respond in a way that, oh, we should rob these people. Most of us still have this basic compassion and empathy. And we wouldn't feel like being robbed by the others when we ourselves are having difficult times. For now, I just ask a simple question. Why are there so many charities and humanitarian organizations out there when humans are naturally violent? And why are there large amount of money donated to these organizations? And there are dozens of people volunteering in these groups. They don't get paid. Secondly, for my second point, we don't deny that animals are aggressive, but Animals are only aggressive when they face threats or any other reasons. We don't intentionally cause serious injury or death to other animals, and we do. It is certainly that our history is filled with lots of war and cruelty, but this does not really mean that humans are violent in nature. Wars are in fact more likely the results of social and political factors instead of biological factors, and there are no proven genes that making humans there are no proven genes that make humans go to war and humans feel happy when wars happen. War only results in fear and terror, as it doesn't really keep us safe. We do not know whether it is us who is going to die next. And soldier participates in. In short, humans do act aggressively sometimes, but most of the time they do not result in violence. Violence is not in the nature of humans. It is not the root or cause, but it is a result of social and political factors and many other reasons.
Time's up.
Thank you.
And I thank the member for her remarks. And we now shall hear from the second speaker for the proposition. Tanya Shree, please begin.
Okay. A very good evening. I bid to members of the opposition and members of the floor. Before I go on with my argument, let me address some rebuttals towards the first speaker's points. Now, the first speaker stated that humans couldn't come this far without violence, but that is utterly baseless. After all, look at the theory of evolution. Humans have come this far due to violence. It's called evolution. After all, where does the term natural selection come from? Furthermore, the opposition seems to conveniently ignore the definition of violence and only focusing on physical violence. And my first speaker has clearly stated how violence manifests in so many forms, such as emotional, psychological, and emotional, psychological, sexual, physical, and so many more. Furthermore, the opposition stated that in a certain language there's no word for violent or violence. But does that mean violence does not exist just because there's no word for it in the language? Again, it's baseless. Furthermore, she talked about how so many charities exist, therefore we are fundamentally good in nature. But charities too misuse funds. And when people volunteer, do they volunteer for truly altruistic reasons? But that's not the truth. Because we too volunteer for selfish reasons. We volunteer to feel good about ourselves and so on and so forth. With that, let me move on to my arguments. By the end of my speech today, I will prove to you that humans are naturally violent on two bases, on the dark triad, DT, and on everyday violence. The dark triad, DT, consists of narcissism, which is extreme selfishness, psychopathy, which is impaired remorse, and Machiavellianism, which is when someone is cold and calculative to do anything to reach their goals. Now, the prevalence of DT personalities was tested and successfully found in the average human being, just like you and I, not just in psychopaths. Furthermore, there has been multiple studies comparing identical and fraternal twins that has proven to be a large genetic and heritable component for DT personalities that I have stated above. Now, you might be wondering, how does this relate to our motion? Well, people with DT personalities tend to verbally abuse, psychologically and emotionally manipulate others. After all, this is a subtype of violence because going back sorry, I'm not right now. Going back to the definition, violence is the intent done to hurt someone with intent. Now I'm going to list out a few famous TV and movie personalities, and I want you to think of a few words that comes to mind. James Bond, Don Draper from Mad Men, and Jordan Belfort from Wolf of Wall Street. A group of scientists carried out an experiment on these personalities, and the participants came up with the words such as confident, manly, and bold, and arrogant. Now, despite all of these personalities having dark traits, it was concluded that people with dark trait personalities are seen as having a sex appeal, as proved by studies. Now, we might think that we might run for our lives when we see people who are narcissistic or who have impaired remorse, but once again, going back to an evolutionary aspect, we can conclude that we don't only carry DT traits, but we're also attracted to them, and these preserve the genes for generations and generations to come through propagation. Moving on to everyday violence. Everyday violence is the violence that you and I partake in daily, or perhaps have been victims to, but they have become so normalized that they're not called violence per se. Again, violence is the intent to hurt someone, and as stated by the first speaker, it's not limited to physical violence. Now, going on to verbal abuse. I'm sure most of us here have been bullied, or perhaps you were the bully. And you can't lie to me, or you can't deny the fact that bullies do bullying with the absolute intent to enforce long-term mental and, in some cases, physical effect. And this is further proven with the Freudian theory and the frustration aggression theory. According to Freud, the drive for aggression is innate, just like our drive for food. And the only way to reduce aggression is to engage in activity that displaces this aggression. Undoubtedly, frustration always leads to aggression without second thought, without any cognition. And when we're frustrated, we intend to do things like stamp the table or pull our hair, or more commonly, we direct our anger towards others and manipulate them and shout them, make them feel bad. Isn't that a form of violence, specifically emotional violence? Going on to cultural violence. Cultural violence is when humans discriminate against minorities, lower classes, based on race and physical traits such as skin color. Now, the opposition may argue that it is rarely seen in Malaysia, but that's not a good example as we have grown up in a heterogeneous country. Now, if we're comparing to homogeneous countries such as, say, Japan or South Korea, there you will see there is a big rise of hate crimes against minorities just because they're not from the same country as them. Now, for an example, in Malaysia, it's pretty obvious, and you can't deny the fact that we do discriminate against minorities, especially minorities and immigrants, especially if they come from third world countries. Now, why does this happen? It's because when we feel threatened, we tend to aggress when we feel threatened on our social and economic status. Now, for an example, a few months ago, Al Jazeera made a documentary about a mistreatment of immigrants in Malaysia, such as confining them in small areas during COVID-19 and handcuffing young children until they cried under the hot sun, and to the point where this small girl got significant mental trauma. Despite all this happening to the immigrants, the only thing that Malaysians focused on was how these immigrants were being so ungrateful as they feel threatened with large numbers of outsiders coming in. And this is shown by lashing anger all over social media until the deportation of one legal migrant who was in Malaysia for 6 years with a legal permit, who was deported and was celebrated all over social media simply for speaking out about the treatments he went through. And now I will prove to you about how violent we are in nature when we are threatened against with a few comments that I obtained. And I quote, "Purify Selangor from foreigners for the sake of Malaysia. Solid immigration, clean it all, good job. And last but not least, Satan is an illegal immigrant that troubles others. Shoot the illegal immigrants or kill them yourself," which were comments that garnered thousands and thousands of likes and laugh reactions. This only reinstates that when we feel threatened, we put our prejudice and belief towards others to feel better about ourselves. Now, before I end my speech, I'd like to leave a question for you to ponder on. If humans were really peaceful in nature, then why is persistent guidance and intervention so heavily emphasized on parents from a child's formative years, from infancy up to adolescence? Wouldn't this only prove how humans are so easily swayed and pick up negative tendencies, hence reinforcing that humans are indeed naturally violent? Thank you.
I thank the member for her remarks, and we shall now hear the second speaker from the opposition. Sharfa, please begin.
Thank you so much. Can you give me 1 second, please? I'm trying to get my video on properly. Is it on? Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll start. Thank you. Members of the floor and the audience, I have one simple thing to say to the person who came before me. The last thing that you asked the audience was, why is so many parents asked to nurture their children and ask them to go against violence? Do you know why? It's because it's nurture against nature. Humans are nurtured to become violent, just like humans can be nurtured to become members of society that are actually calm and kind and nice. I would like to start by rebutting my previous opponent's points. You said that we completely ignored the fact that humans are more propositioned towards violence, but you kept saying one word that I would like to point out to the audience today: reaction.
It's reaction, it's external stimuli. Humans would not be violent if there was no external stimuli to actually stimulate them to become violent in the first place. You said it yourself, reaction. They are violent because this is a reaction to the nature of the environment around them. Just like children with bullying, just like people with psychopath tendencies. I wanted to give a POI to the person before me, but I could not. The POI was, of all the people who actually do have DT tendencies, there was only actually 5% of these people who have proven to be naturally violent, to have committed violent acts. Most of the people in these DT communities are actually peaceful in nature. And the fact that you brought this up is actually stereotyping these people. 60% of adults falsely believe that humans as a species are naturally violent animals, thanks to the likes of Sigmund Freud and Konrad Lorenz, who were very famous in their time, but since then, for the last 20 years, have been thoroughly discredited and proven to be hacks. It's their fault that so many people have a folk culture of believing human nature being what it is, there will always be war. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm here to tell you that this antiquated notion that has been scientifically proven to be false over the course of 2 decades needs to finally be put to rest. Do you believe that the earth is flat even after scientific evidence has been provided? No. Do you believe vaccines are bullshit? No. Are we Karens on Facebook? Why are we still fighting over something that was proven to be the made-up ideas of an old hack who said an innocent woman was a psychopath because she didn't look sad enough? I'm talking about Freud. Why are we better than that? No. Believing this idea goes against the research done by psychologists for over 20 years, and some people still refuse to believe it. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, today my points will be showing you evidence that the notion that humans are naturally violent is just as false as the thought of some people that global warming crisis is a lie, thanks to widespread misinformation. It has been scientifically proven false, which is why the opposition should win today's debate. My first point is about nurture against nature. I have a question for the House. If humans were truly so naturally violent, like you say, how is it that the hunter-gatherer societies like the tribes of the Amazonian rainforest are amongst the most peaceful people in the world? By your definition, since they are closer to nature and thus evidence of simple human nature, they should be more violent. They should kill each other without provocation. They should be so damn bloody in their daily lives that we would know that it's a part of their culture. And yet, we do know that the only times that they kill is to hunt and to defend themselves from external stimuli. It is not a natural trait. Modern accredited researchers like John Paul Scott say that all higher level mammals, like humans, only act violently thanks to external stimuli, aka to eat or to protect themselves. Even murderers have some kind of external stimuli. Even serial killers do not snap. They react to what they perceive to be a threat. They were molded by their environment. If that were in the case, so much of psychology wouldn't be spending time looking at their childhoods, but would instead be looking at the chemicals in their brains, in their bodies as the cause, not the symptom. If humans were so naturally violent, why do soldiers have to go through months and years of insensitivity training? Why do they have to go through years and years of being taught to kill? Why do they have to be nurtured to fight and kill their fellow man if it's in their nature? You'd just have to give them a gun and be done with it. Did you know that 80% of soldiers don't pull the trigger on their first battle? That's actually one of the highest cause of death in war. Soldiers die because they can't instinctively bring themselves to kill their fellow man, even after being given a just cause. Remember the word I just used, instinctively. It means they naturally can't bring their own bodies to do that. If violence was such a huge propensity of human nature, why did so many of them die? For my second point, I would like to point out that amongst those stigmatized by their lack of ordinary reaction and conscience, there are two groups of people thought to be more naturally violent. This is not true. Amongst them, sociopaths, by very definition, were forced to become what they are by their environment, and psychopaths are considered an anomaly of humans. If humans were so naturally violent, why are psychopaths treated as being unnatural? They don't have that many emotions, which in turn makes them better suited to deal with the emotions or the violence of humanity that the House says that we naturally have. But even most psychopaths never act aggressively, which is why I use the word stigma. They are treated as possibly violent creatures and thus discriminated against. If we were actually as naturally violent as the House says, because 1 in 20 people are actually psychopaths, then there would be so much more violence in the world than there actually is. The news will be filled with it every single day, more than it actually is. The reason that the news is filled with so many less amount of stories that gain traction is because it's an unnatural event in human history. For my third point, I would like to point out that when talking about violence in humanity, most people like to argue for the motion that say, oh, we're humans, humans are animals, animals are naturally violent. But animals only kill to eat and to defend themselves. On top of that, humans have a sixth sense called the conscious, which unless taught, you cannot ignore. You have to actively learn to be violent by gathering hate against something. You have to motivate them. Humans as animals don't suddenly go up to a random dude on the street and hit them on the head with a shoe without any external stimuli. If you do that, you're crazy. Just like animals, humans have to be given a reason to act aggressively. There is a reason for saying racism isn't inherent, it's learned. Hatred isn't inherent, it's learned. Just like that, violence isn't inherent, it's learned. I'd like to finish this by saying just one thing. If humans were so naturally violent, how is it that the collective word that we use for compassion, nurturing, and taking care of each other is called humanity? Why is it that taking care of others is called being humane? Why isn't that the word we use to describe war and killing and violence? We call that the lack of humanity. It's because we know that violence is not just in our nature, it goes completely against it. I rest my case. Thank you.
I thank the member for her remarks, and now I'll call upon the third and also the last speaker for the proposition. Aziz, please begin.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, I'll begin. So, good evening, members of the House and the proposition as well as the opposition. So, today we've seen a lot of debates coming from our side and their side, speaking about the nature of and how humans can be violent in nature and without intervention, as some of you have mentioned. And I'd like to start with a quote from Thomas Hobbes, which is, "No art, no letters, no society, and worst of all, a continual fear of danger and violent death, and the life of man would be solitary or nasty, brutish, and short." As the quote suggests, we right now have a dynamic that's going on between us, that we have a set of rules here that we follow while running this very debate. We are assuming that each of us would be civil enough to have this discussion and not use vulgar terms or be violent towards each other. Okay.
In no point did the opposition ever point out that we were assuming that humans would not be violent towards each other without external stimuli. Thank you.
You would say that humans would not be aggressive without a stimuli, but there are studies that show that, like, I'll come back to your point if I'm taking this POI. You've mentioned that humans are not racist, it's learned. Well, there are studies that show that babies at the age of 5 and lower have shown an affinity to recognize members of their own society, racial ethnic group rather than another one. And this can support the fact that we are innately racist. And supporting my second speaker, Tanya Shree, when she spoke about how there were problems in Malaysia regarding ethnic groups. And this can be seen in other parts of the world as well. It's not subject to Malaysia. We see this in China going on right now, where just on the basis of religion, there's basically a genocide going on where people are being cleansed in order to, if they do not abide to the religious constraints of the country. And so I'll move on to my first point. So let's imagine we didn't have rules and for this talk, we would not be sitting here having a civil discussion. Because of these assumptions we have about each other, which is why we have this sort of civil sense of having this discussion. Let's say I start using vulgarity, and that would completely change our dynamics, and I would expect you to do the same. And as you said, this is a reaction, but this comes from a place of being exploitative, which is in human nature. We see this throughout cultures where people have been exploiting other countries and plundering other countries for ages. We see this because there's a sense of dominance that needs to be acquired in humans, and this comes through violence. We have dominance hierarchies in our societies, which we need to occupy in order to feel sort of maintain that sort of power in the society. This stems from our primate ancestors as well as our, this stems from an evolutionary standpoint, since tribalism and groupism is a part of their lifestyle. We have studies that show that chimpanzees can show extremely violent behavior toward members of an opposing tribe without any, like you said, reaction being needed. As soon as a person enters their let's say territory, it's seen that they, without any question, would be attacking that person. And this is seen with humans as well. Humans are built, I'll go back to the first speaker of our group who said that we are built naturally to be violent in terms of our physical features as well. There are studies and in archaeology that show fossil studies how our faces are shaped to take a beating. And also many studies have also shown from archaeology that humans have been taking, humans have been being violent against each other for far longer before any societal intervention. And also, as hold on, my bad. So let me go on to another biological standpoint where it is found that oxytocin plays a big role in our violent behaviors, and thus many different people are pre-wired to have different levels of these hormones in our and chemicals in our bodies. So if we have a more mind-only standpoint, if we have an only mind standpoint, this would be that we are pre-wired to have these violent tendencies, and different people have different levels of these. Also, we have a gene that is a gene mutation, which is the XYY syndrome, in which a man is born with an extra Y chromosome, which has seemed to be linked to violence and increased behaviors of violence. So with that, I'd just like to conclude that there is a lot of evidence that supports that humans are naturally violent, and these things are controlled by biological factors. And yeah.
I thank the member for his remarks, and we shall now hear the third and also the last speaker from the opposition. Chen, please begin.
Yes, so just to check, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask you a question. If violence does happen in society, does that mean that every single person in this world today is naturally violent? The proposition team tries to give us a lot of evidence and a lot of theories to prove that violence is actually innate in humans, that humans are actually naturally violent. However, they just gave this evidence without actually comparing as to why their side is more important than our side. Because if we just give these kind of evidence, we still cannot try to come to a conclusion whether humans are naturally violent or humans learn violence from other places or just get this violence from external stimuli, right? So under opposition side, what I'm going to do today is to disprove this claim that humans are naturally violent and to give you evidence and compare, most importantly, compare as to why our side is more important and proves to you better than opposition side. So let us first deal with what proposition first speaker has mentioned. I think proposition third speaker did not really give us much material because what he mentioned was almost exactly the same as what his first speaker has mentioned. So let us deal with first speaker from proposition first. So proposition team, first speaker mentioned two things. So firstly, she mentioned that humans find violent acts pleasurable and fun. So she tried to substantiate that with two things, right? First, about sociopaths and psychopaths. So what my speaker has already told the proposition side is that how many people in this world today are sociopaths and psychopaths. Sociopaths and psychopaths only make up 1% of the population in this world today. The percentage is so small that there's not so many people who are sociopaths and psychopaths in this world today. So we believe that using all these kinds of evidence to support their claim that humans are naturally violent does not really stand. And also, sociopaths are people who has mental disorders. Something is wrong with their brain. So it means that you cannot say that these people are naturally violent because they are already having mental disorders. They are someone who is not normal, who is not natural, right? Secondly, she tried to substantiate by using bullying, but she didn't really tell us as to and justify as to why bullying is actually innate for humans. But what I want to tell you is that these kinds of bullying or trying to create violence towards other people are actually from learning and from the education from your parents, from observing other people, observing your friends or family, and so on. And this can be actually substantiated by using Banduria's social learning theory, where he actually conducted an experiment for two groups, and one group was exposed to a person or model actually kicking a doll, and another group was not exposed to this. And it shows that from this experiment clearly that the group was exposed to this kind of violence actually created more violence when they were in the same situation or in the same scenario. So this actually proves that people actually observe and imitate these kinds of violent acts or aggression. Right. Secondly, she mentioned about the physiological makeup, or about our fists trying to buttress other people, and how we evolved from these kinds of chimpanzees or other kinds of animals. Right. But we believe that, firstly, this does not actually justify that we are naturally violent. Why? Because A, this is just a physiological makeup. It's just our outlook, our appearance, our face, right? What actually this violence comes from is from our brain. So unless we can actually prove that this comes from our brain, then their point about this physiological makeup and stuff like that can stand. And then secondly, if they can use chimpanzees, we can also use things like our relatives, our close relatives like bonobos or even apes, to prove to you that these animals are actually peaceful, and chimpanzees are just outliers in our world today. So this does not really prove to you that humans evolving from these kinds of animals are actually violent. And she actually gave you a statement saying that we are surrounded by violence in the beginning of her speech. So if you mean that you are surrounded by violence, does this mean that we actually learn violence from others? Second, let us deal with the case from second speaker now. So second speaker gave us a few things, right? First, she mentioned about carrying dark traits, DT, right? But we don't really understand this because these dark traits, or the evidence she has gave, some of the examples she has given was actually fictional characters. So fictional characters are just made up. We cannot say that these are actually real examples, real people having and carrying these kind of dark traits, right? Secondly, she mentioned that aggression is innate and giving a lot of theories and examples which I already mentioned, like Freud and then other kinds of theories. So if you really want to talk about all these kind of theories, we can have a never-ending debate about theories. However, what we want to do today is to actually compare all these kind of theories, the theories about humans who are actually innate, violence innate, and secondly, theories where humans actually learn from other people, learn these kind of violence and aggression from other people. We believe that our theories on learning, social learning theories, do stand more and are more important than those theories where they say that actually humans violence actually innate, because all those theories are just claims. But our theories that we have already proven are actually experiments that's already been shown that it's really true. So we believe that all these experiments and results that have been shown are even and are better going to be standing over all the claims and just statements given by the proposition side. And then lastly, what she mentioned was about cultural violence, right? Saying that we discriminate against minorities and so on, that we are actually violent in this case. But what we want to tell the proposition side is that when we are born, when we are babies, we are just like a white piece of paper. We do not know what is discrimination. We do not know what is racism. So how do we actually learn that? We learn that through nurture. My speaker has already told you that nurture is very, very important, because that is where we learn everything. We are educated. We are educated about racism. We are educated about discrimination. And that is why we discriminate against other people. We discriminate against people who are not the same as us. So we believe that nurture is more important than what you mentioned about nature. So unless proposition today can prove that all the things that they've mentioned today are not nurtured but nature, only they can win this debate. But we see that they have not done this. So we have already proven to you very clearly about why nurture is more important than nature in trying to cultivate these kind of violence. Therefore, we believe that we take this debate for today. Thank you.
I thank the member for her remarks, and that was an excellent debate for all the debaters. I hope everyone has enjoyed it, and most importantly, don't forget to fill in the judging form, which you can find in the meeting chat. And if you still haven't casted your votes, please do so. We will now have 5 minutes for you to cast your votes. And in the meantime, do ask away if you have any question regarding the judging form. A Q&A session regarding the topic of this debate will be conducted after these 5 minutes, and the winner will be announced after the Q&A session. Please take note that the Q&A session will not be taken into account for the judging. We will continue at 7:01. Thank you. All right, thank you for voting, and we're now calculating the scores, and the winners will be revealed after this Q&A session. Also, for those of you who want to claim your SCPD points, there will be a form later to be sent in the meeting chat, and please fill in the form later. And the form will only be open for 10 minutes after it is sent in the group chat, in the meeting chat, sorry. And yeah, now we'll have the Q&A session. So you can ask about any question related to the topic today, which is violence in human nature. So anyone from the floor, you can just ask any question and the questions will be answered by the debaters today. And if you want to ask a question, you can just raise your hand using the raise hand feature. But if you guys don't have question, I do have question. Oh, Batika, you have question. Please ask away, Batika.
Yeah, so before I move on to calculating the scores, I just have a little question since nobody was asking. I was really hoping that the opposition would actually introduce the point that, you know, if humans are naturally violent, then what's the use of having courts and law, etc., you know, having police and all of that. But none of them actually raised that point. So I just want to know what the proposition's take is on it, and I want to know why the opposition didn't raise that point, or maybe I missed it.
Anyone from the proposition team wants to answer? Oh, Sharfa, you have unmuted yourself.
Oh, yeah. Can I just do the one for the opposition first?
Sure, sure.
Okay, so I'd like to just say that is a very good point, Vartika. Thanks. The actual reason why we didn't want to include that in our debate in the end was because this is we had a feeling about what the proposition was going to go with, which is why so many of my points were like so detailed about some of their points, because like this is actually a debate that has been taking place over a very long time. So most of the time the same points come up. So I wanted to like address their points in a more functional way rather than just bring up the court and law, because the court and law is something that could have also been used by the proposition to say that, oh, if humans weren't naturally violent, then there would be no need for court and law, which is why I decided that, for me, myself personally, I decided to steer clear of that. Thank you.
Fair enough. What's the proposition statement?
Adding to Vartika. Oh, sorry. Please continue.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I just had another question as well, but I think someone was answering, so it's okay.
I think Sarah, you can just go ahead with your question.
Okay. Yeah, no one mentioned guilt. Because like usually when humans do something wrong or do something violent, they feel guilty towards it. And we all feel guilt. Even like psychopaths, sometimes like over the years, they end up feeling guilty. So if violence is natural, then wouldn't feeling guilty not exist? Wouldn't we just not have a conscience? And wouldn't evolution remove through like as evolution, as we grow, wouldn't conscience just go and guilt go away? But we still do feel guilty, even if we're not even actively in the violence part. So yeah, no one also addressed that part.
Sarah, do you have a specific or particular debater that you want him or her to answer?
I don't know, it could be anyone from the proposition or the opposition team. Like, what do you guys think about this?
Actually, Sarah, I did bring up conscience in my talk about in my point about sociopaths and psychopaths. I talked about how you have to learn how to like ignore your conscience. I didn't use the word guilt in like itself, but like I did talk about conscience. Just pointing it out.
Oh, all right. Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any question or idea to share related to the topic? Or even from the debater, any idea that you have in mind but you just didn't talk about it during the debate just now, can just bring it up to the discussion.
I actually had a POI. Is it okay if I say it now? Like,
yes, definitely.
Okay, so I think it was the second. It was this. I don't know. I think it was Sharfa. I don't know if she was the first speaker or second speaker. I can't remember. But she made a point that about biological explanations, that there is none other than like it's only been tested on people like psychopaths who obviously have a disorder. That's what was mentioned in their speech.
No, it was not. That wasn't what I said. Sorry.
Oh, I think maybe it was the other speaker then.
Okay, but
yeah, something similar to like, that those who are tested are the ones that have a disorder, so it can't, like, there's lack of biological explanations. So I actually wanted to say for that reactions to external stimuli, there is biological evidence for, a certain kind of neurotransmitter increasing when someone is impulsive, which is part of violence. So a reaction is not fully, nurture. It is also like nature. So there is biological evidence for neurotransmitters, the role of neurotransmitters in reaction to external stimuli, and also the brain is involved in how we process information. So how we process an external event is also, the brain has a role in it.
All right, I do have a question for the debaters today. So as some of the debaters just now mentioned that it's about reaction, and reaction this term has also been mentioned by both proposition and also opposition team. But this is my personal thought. How would you define reaction as natural or not natural? If we do have the tendency to react, how is that natural or not natural? Okay, Zara?
So you mean like, so your question is whether reaction is natural or nurture?
Yes.
Okay. So one point that I didn't mention in my speech, I would like to say is that I think I did mention, but I don't remember whether I mentioned it or not, or I missed it, that some humans are more violent than others, but it exists within a human species. So same as reaction. So like I said, the way the brain processes external stimuli, external events, life events of an individual, some may have the ability to, like, their brain may process it differently than another individual going through the same life event. So some may have a more violent reaction, and some may.
And I have a bunch of friends with the name C, and they call it like, oh shit.
Can I answer what Zara said a few minutes ago?
Yeah, definitely.
Is that possible? Zara, I just want to clarify. The whole thing about the reaction of the stimuli, of the external stimuli thing, wasn't whether the brain actually does answer to that. But the whole point of it was that it isn't inherently within our nature itself. It is something that is learned, and it's something that came through evolution or because of external stimuli. That is what we were trying to point out at the time. Thank you.
Okay, Zara, you have something to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Zara can go first.
I actually wanted to make it clear to Sharfa that if reaction is not natural, then why is it that babies, newborn babies, when there's a loud sound, they would shiver because they haven't really learned to protect themselves yet. But how come they can detect?
No. The point wasn't reaction is natural, but at the end of the day, it is reaction to something that happened outside. That was the point. Reaction is natural. I completely agree with you on that.
You just said reaction was learned.
The reaction of a particular type of violence is a learned thing over the course of evolution.
Could you elaborate that? Let's say, for example, there's a baby who is being pinched. The reaction to that would be, crying, if not trying to, stop the pinching by some means of intervening with that. And that's natural, I guess.
Again, as I said before, she's crying. The reaction is happening because someone is pinching her, right? It's not that she is crying on her own for no reason, right? It's because someone is actively hurting her that she is giving that reaction. It's not coming from inside of her, like on its own, right? Like it's happening because of like something that someone else is doing to her. Isn't it just like what animals do? Like most of the time, most animals are peaceful. They only hunt to kill and eat. They only go against something and they only react aggressively when they feel threatened. And that's something that was shown in most of the studies that were brought up, is that without that external stimuli, there wasn't going to be a reaction from the person. We're not saying that the reaction isn't natural. We're saying that the reaction happens because of external stimuli.
Okay,
What would you put into external stimuli? Oh, sorry, Chia, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that both Tanushree and Jara raised their hands, but Aziz, you can continue since you have spoken.
I was just asking what she would define as external stimuli, because if, let's say, the external stimuli is a sort of violent behavior, where is that coming from?
Okay.
Like the whole genesis of the violent behavior.
How about this? Does the theory that hate is propagated? You agree with that, yes, Aziz? That hate is not inherent in humans, it's propagated. It started somewhere. We don't know how it started. We don't know how the chicken and the egg started, yes? We don't know who came first, the chicken or the egg, but biologically speaking, it was the chicken because they came from dinosaurs. But like the point is that so many of these external stimuli, this cycle of hate and the cycle of violence goes back so many centuries. We can't actually just like, as a debater myself, I don't have the knowledge or the idea to like be able to tell you where this violence started, but it's been proven throughout the centuries and throughout so many of the recent studies that these violent acts are caused by external stimuli. That was our point in that particular sense.
We're not trying to prove when violence started and who started it. And if we could do that, then this debate would go on forever.
Okay, Tanya Shree and Zara, do you guys want to say something?
Zara, do you want to go first?
Okay, so like Sharfa mentioned that there is the external stimuli which initiates hate in people. So like the point I was trying to make by reaction was, my point with the newborn baby was that if a newborn baby, like a 7-month-old baby, is trying to, they learn how to scratch. Like from personal experience, I know that they learn how to scratch, and like a lot of like. So why is it that the first thing they sorry, not learn, they just develop this thing, they start scratching, or when they're trying to grab something they just scratch it. So why is it that it's scratching other than like a more pleasant sign than scratching? Or like we usually see aggression in children. How is it that like very young children, so like newborn babies or even toddlers, so it's not necessarily picked up, some of it is just there? And sometimes when a child has even picked up aggression from family members or somewhere, even like television or media, but why is it so difficult to reverse it in some people? Because like my point to that would be that some people are more vulnerable, naturally vulnerable, so there is some kind of natural violence within that human being that makes it so difficult to reverse the learned violence.
Okay, for the sake of this debate, I'll just say one more thing. Zara, you said that the child naturally learns like scratching and violent acts and it doesn't learn anything else. That was the first sentence you used, right? But like, didn't the kid that you have personal experience with ever hold your finger affectionately? Didn't she ever smile and laugh and giggle? It's literally like, and as for the children, these children are also, are you trying to say that even when the children are 4 or 5 years old, they are not exposed to society? They are not exposed to external factors? Are you trying to say that they are completely a bubble within themselves? I would like to say to that point that right after we are born, at the moment of its birth, a human baby, or no matter what baby it is a blank piece of paper. But from after that, it has individual life experiences, right? So those individual life experiences are something that makes it grow, that makes it learn. It's all a part of nurture, is what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Okay, adding on to what Shafari mentioned that babies, they do hold hands and stuff. Now I do have a question for both sides. Do you think kindness and violence can coexist in human nature? Kizara?
The point I was making was, yeah, the babies do hold hands. Like your question, Chia, that can kindness and violence exist in human nature? The point I was making was violence is not like, it's not just nurture. I mean, the point I was making with the newborn babies example was that there is naturally some violence within the person, like within the human being itself, which is why we can say that it's something that's natural.
When to answer Chia's question, I'd say definitely violence and you know what's the other extreme, altruism, I guess, and all these positive things are definitely coexisting within us, which is overall what makes us human and different from other species. So I'd say yes, they definitely can coexist, and they are needed for that to coexist, without which we wouldn't have societies. For example, let's talk about groups, and how there's you you would find that members of a certain group would show altruism and positive outlook toward their own group, but a sense of violence toward the other group. So this is all inbuilt in us and needed in to this is going back to the evolutionary thing where one group will survive eventually. If there's a scarcity of resources, you are required to show a certain level of aggression and violence toward the other group so that you could acquire these resources and provide for your own community and tribe, which will allow you to pass on your genes. So yeah.
Yeah, and to answer Carmen's question as well, right? I also agree that kindness and violence both can coexist in a human, but in the end, right? How does this person grow up to be who he or she is coming from the nurture part, which is the education and the teachings of, it can be religion, it can be the culture, it can be from their parents, from school. So with this, all these kind of teachings, they can teach a child to be a kind person, to be a caring person, to have empathy and to have sympathy, and therefore this person will grow up to be someone who is kind and someone who is empathetic. And if they neglect these kinds of teachings or nurture and they deviate from this and learn something bad, and they can grow up to be someone who is evil and also violent. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, debaters. And I guess that will be the end of our Q&A session. It's getting quite late. We are all a bit tired. But before we end it, I would have to announce the winners of today. And the proposition team got 19.97 points, and the opposition team got 22.77 points. So the opposition team will be the winner for today's debate.
Woohoo!
Both teams, well done. Okay, and do you remember you actually also voted for the best speaker for today? The best speaker for the proposition team is Tanya Shree.
Let's go, Tanya Shree.
And the best speaker from the opposition team is Sharfa.
Let's go, Sharfa. Woo!
Okay, and also I just realized I forgot to change the slide. Okay, here's the slide for the results part. And that's it for results, but there'll be a finale on Friday, and the winning team of today's debate will be debating against the winning team of yesterday's debate. And the motion of the debate on Friday will be: the House believes that arts should be included in STEM. And thank you all for coming today. And thank you to all the debaters for their great efforts. I hope everyone has enjoyed and benefited from today's event. And well, I welcome all of you to spectate the debate on Friday. See you then and have a nice day. And don't forget.
Did we mention SPGs form? Oh, you guys did it?
Yeah, it's already there in the chat.
Yeah,
Alright,
you could claim the SCPD points from the link sent in the chat box. It was sent by Vatika. Thank you all for today.
Thanks, everyone. Could we please take a picture before all of you leave?
Yes, please turn on your camera.
If you could, unshare your screen and we could take a picture.
I switched to a device with no camera.
No problem, no problem. But at least those who are there, we can just take a picture with them. So I'm gonna wait for people to turn their cameras on. A lot of people turned on their cameras yesterday when they came for the debate. People were very excited for Debatethon. Now people are leaving the chat already. But thank you all for coming. We really hope to see you in our finale. Okay, if no more people are turning their cameras on, then I'm just gonna take a picture now. In 3, 2, 1. All right, congrats to the winners. See you in the finale. And
Really well done, guys.
yeah, the proposition team still gets certificates. So yeah, that's a win-win situation. All right, see you guys.
Bye, guys. Thanks for the awesome debate.
Bye.
It was really fun. Bye.